Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you're part of a growing global enterprise, you probably know this feeling. The operational whiplash is real. You've expanded into 20 countries, but your finance operations, well, they're still acting like 20 completely independent storefronts. We're talking specifically about cash management, that place where your outgoing money is just scattered across, I don't know, dozens of different systems, all these local banks and these wildly inconsistent approval processes. So how do you possibly get any kind of genuine real-time visibility and, strategic control and all that chaos? Today, our mission is to cut right through that complexity. We've been digging into some executive briefings. The source materials aim straight at CFOs, and they detail the sheer business cost of this payment fragmentation. And they also detail the solution proposed by SAP S4HANA Advanced Payment Management, or APM. We're here to arm you with a quick strategic understanding of why that status quo is so unsustainable and what a centralized approach can actually deliver.
The underlying instability here it's pretty profound. The documents make it really clear that most large multinational finance organizations, they just haven't evolved. They're still stuck with basically one payment mechanism for each local entity. It's not a system. It's just a collection of disconnected channels, and each one is talking to its own local bank in its own unique way.
And the moment you say unique channels, you're talking about complexity and risk. This isn't just about, tidying things up. The sources we looked at highlight four critical outcomes of this disconnection that are actively just bleeding resources and undermining strategy.
Precisely. Let's start with just the operational drag. When you don't have that central view, you immediately face inefficient cash utilization. You just can't pool your funds effectively. And then that's made worse by high bank fees and delayed reconciliations. Your teams are spending hours just trying to match up all these scattered payment confirmations.
The cost of just running those parallel systems must be astronomical, but I think the biggest fear factor, the one that really jumps out from the sources, is the risk.
Oh, it absolutely is. Increased fraud exposure is pretty much unavoidable when your controls are so inconsistent across different regions. I mean, if one entity has a really robust multi-step approval process and another has just a quick email sign-off, well, that weakest link is now your global standard.
Wow. But the element that truly keeps CFOs up at night is that fourth point, right? The loss of strategic confidence. When your cash is scattered all over the place, you just cannot get a consolidated real-time view of your outgoing cash flow.
And if you can't accurately predict the money that's leaving, your liquidity forecasting is basically built on quicksand. The sources reveal a pretty heartbreaking baseline statistic. Many of these huge global organizations, they start with a liquidity forecast accuracy rate of often only 60%.
60%. That's a coin flip plus a tiny bit.
Yeah.
If you're a CFO trying to make major capital allocation decisions or maybe decide if you need to hit the debt market next quarter, that level of uncertainty, it just forces you to be massively conservative.
It does. It forces treasury teams to hold far too much buffer cash, just in case. And that buffer cash isn't earning interest. It's working capital being drained by operational fear, simply because they don't trust their own data.
And if we look at the specific pain points the executives identified, it's pretty easy to see why. I mean, they're talking about connectivity overload and approval stagnation.
Connectivity overload.
Yeah.
That means you're managing 15, 20, sometimes even more separate bank interfaces. And each one needs its own maintenance, its own patching, security oversight, and staff who actually know how to run them. It sounds less like treasury management and more like trying to wrangle 15 different servers.
The maintenance cost alone is a huge issue, but then you hit that approval stagnation. The sources confirm that across all these different entities, those necessary compliance steps can stretch the approval time to, what, up to 3 days?
3 days. Just think about the opportunity cost of that. That is 72 hours where your money is effectively frozen. It's just sitting there waiting for a signature or some system handshake that might be delayed because someone's on vacation in another time zone.
And that lack of centralization also means you have zero leverage. Like the sources point out, if you're sending payments out through 15 different local bank relationships, you have absolutely no transparency on your total transaction costs.
Exactly. You can't negotiate for better rates, and you certainly can't audit what you can't even see. The combination of high maintenance costs, massive approval lag, and just unreliable forecasting. It makes the whole status quo a strategic liability.
Okay, so given that 3-day approval cycle and that 60% uncertainty, the pressure to find a single fix must be just enormous. So if fragmentation is the enemy, How specifically does SAP APM step in? How does it intercept that chaos? It's positioned as this centralized orchestration hub, right, in your payment factory.
That's the perfect term for it. APM is the great unifier. Its whole goal is to provide a single funnel where all outgoing payment requests have to flow. It doesn't matter what the originating system is, or the country, or the ERP. It simplifies the front end for every single entity while giving corporate treasury complete control on the back end.
Let's break down the mechanism there because this is where it gets really smart. The first function is centralization. It takes all these different requests from S/4HANA, an old legacy system, even a non-SAP system, and it converts them into a standard format, a payment order. Why is that standardization, that payment order, so foundational to everything else?
That is the crucial turning point. Imagine you have payment instructions coming in speaking German, Mandarin, and Spanish. The system can't process them efficiently if it has to learn 15 different languages. The payment order is that universal language. It standardizes all the data sender, recipient, amount, compliance checks, the absolute instant it hits the APM system.
So every single payment request, no matter where it came from, is immediately translated into a universal language the system can read and, more importantly, trust.
Precisely. And once it's standardized, APM can then execute its second key function, which is intelligent routing. Now, routing can sound a little generic, but APM's routing is really strategic.
But hold on, doesn't smart routing just sound like something their regional banks are already trying to do for them? What makes APM's version so different?
That's a great question. A regional bank only has visibility into its network. APM has a holistic global view. It knows which currencies are cheapest to process through Bank A versus Bank B. It knows which banking channels are compliant for a specific region right now and which path offers the fastest settlement time. So it smartly routes that payment order based on preset rules cost, speed, compliance, ensuring the best path is always taken before the payment even leaves your system.
That optimization sounds incredibly powerful. Okay, so then we move to the third function, which is so vital for these big organizations: harmonization and control. This is what tackles that 3-day approval bottleneck.
Yes. APM enforces consistent global approval workflows. So that process that was taking 3 days in some outlying regional entity, it now has to adhere to the same standardized policy enforced everywhere else. It just eliminates those slow, manual, regional variations and replaces them with a fully auditable digital workflow.
So compliance is actually strengthened, but the bottlenecks are removed because the system makes sure the process is consistent, not complicated.
Absolutely. And then the fourth one, the function the Treasury team probably gets most excited about, real-time visibility. Treasury teams finally get status tracking of every single outgoing payment, all through these intuitive dashboards, specifically the Payment Monitor Fiori app.
So no more calling around, no more emailing local finance managers asking, hey, did that cash finally leave? It's all just visible in real time in one place.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, APM's real strength isn't just what it does by itself, it's how it acts as the centerpiece. It integrates so tightly with the rest of the SAP Treasury landscape. We're talking bank communication management, or BCM, multi-bank connectivity, and bank account management. That synergy creates a true end-to-end single source of truth for all payment activities, from the moment a request is made until it's confirmed by the bank.
Okay, so we've established the pain and we've established the fix.
Right.
But here is the pivot, the measurable impact. The sources give us hard metrics on this transformation, and when you look at the before and after, the payoff is just immediate.
The transformation is undeniable. Let's start with just complexity reduction. Centralization through APM takes that chaotic number of bank interfaces down from that frustrating 15 or more to typically just 3 central hubs that are actually talking to the market.
And that reduction from 15 interfaces down to 3, that's more than just simplifying a screen, isn't it? We're talking about massive savings, IT maintenance, patching cycles, fewer vendor contracts, and just a drastically streamlined security oversight.
Precisely. It frees up IT resources to work on actual innovation instead of just, keeping 15 life support systems running. And crucially, that approval time, which was dragging working capital down for 3 days, is now measured in under 1 hour.
Less than an hour. To put that in perspective, that means cash goes from stuck to investable on the balance sheet almost instantly. It's just available for the next critical business transaction.
It creates instant liquidity agility. And this process standardization, it directly drives cost savings. The transparency you get from centralized routing, these bank fees are reduced by up to 30%. just by intelligently avoiding high-cost channels and, well, being able to negotiate with some leverage, because now you can see your total payment volume globally.
And that most important metric for the CFO, that terrible 60% liquidity accuracy, what happens to that?
It improves dramatically. That confidence score, it leaps from that unreliable 60% figure to 95% or even higher.
Wow.
And that is the true strategic benefit. That jump from 60 to 95% means management is finally making decisions based on data they can actually trust, which in turn eliminates the need to hold all that excessive buffer cash out of fear.
That's so powerful. And to ground this in the real world, the sources had this fantastic anecdote, right, about a multinational retail group that was suffering from exactly this kind of fragmentation.
Yeah, they were a perfect case study. They operated in 28 countries, and they were managing 14 separate bank interfaces.
Hmm.
They were just drowning in the complexity we've been describing. Their solution was to implement SAP APM, and they integrated it with their multi-bank connectivity solution.
And the rationalization was, I mean, it sounds like it was brutal and efficient. They took those 14 interfaces and just slashed them down to only 2 central ones.
The results really speak for themselves. They're measurable financial results. A 25% reduction in bank charges, which perfectly confirms that fee reduction potential we talked about. And operationally, they cut their approval cycle time by a massive 85%. That maps directly to that 3-day to 1-hour reduction we just discussed.
And what's fascinating to me is what the Treasury team gained. It wasn't just savings, it was control. They got the ability to monitor global disbursements from a single dashboard. They could maintain strict regional compliance because ATM enforced those controls, but the visibility was finally unified.
They gained control without sacrificing a single compliance step. They standardized the process globally without, homogenizing their risk profile. The net result is that the Treasury team moved from being this reactionary group, constantly fighting fires and chasing lost payments, to being a strategic team, focusing on cash optimization and forecasting accuracy.
So, to synthesize all this for you, the core message is really this. APM replaces these fragmented, high-risk, opaque processes with one intelligent, transparent, and cost-efficient global payment ecosystem. It's the move from the chaos of distributed spreadsheets and local rules to the clarity of a central command center.
And that transition is what unlocks the strategic value. It delivers the control, the transparency, the compliance, and ultimately it improves your decision-making agility for confident liquidity management. It turns the necessary evil of moving cash into a streamlined, predictable advantage.
Which means Treasury moves from being a cost center that's struggling with all this operational debt to being a proactive strategic partner that's actually driving optimization.
Absolutely. And, as we close out this deep dive, we realize that all the source material we looked at focuses very heavily on the challenges and solutions for outgoing payments, the money leaving the organization. So if centralizing and standardizing your outbound cash flow yields these kinds of results, dramatically cutting fees, increasing liquidity accuracy to 95%, it really raises an important question. How might this exact same philosophy of centralization be applied to standardizing and gaining real-time visibility over your complex inbound revenue streams across those same global entities? What further value does unifying your view of the money coming in unlock after you've already conquered the money going out?
That is a powerful challenge for you to consider as you rethink your own global financial architecture. Thank you for guiding us through this really detailed breakdown of payment rationalization.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.